Thank you for joining us today. We are going to be discussing the opioid addictions in our community.
One person every 10 minutes dies from opioids. In 2016, 64,000 people died of overdose.
Today, we have with us Sean Rhodes, former state representative. When did you start seeing opioid use?
So the first time that I really became aware of it was I was an investigator at the police department in West Plains, and we got called out on a Saturday for a 19-year-old male that was had overdosed and died. At the time, we didn't know he'd overdosed, but once we started investigating it, he had been addicted to pills, had been taking a lot of pills, and unfortunately, it ended up killing him one Saturday morning.
How has the opioid crisis in America affected your job as a legislator?
Well, I think the public outcry for wanting some type of relief, wanting the government to do as much as they can to intervene, make it harder for people to have access to opioids, and I think that's kind of when people come to the Capitol and they say, this is personally how this has affected me and those kind of things, and at some point you have to say, look, there's a problem here, and of course my past career as a law enforcement, I could see it, at the same time. So it was something that I knew firsthand, but I also knew that something had to be done.
Yeah.
And something had to be on a broad scale, a statewide type scale.
Have you seen an increase or decrease in the last 3 years over opioids?
I think I don't think it's decreased. I don't know if it's increased, but I certainly don't think it's decreased at all. I think the access of being able to go to pharmacy or doctor to doctor to obtain a prescription for whatever, and then being able to go to pharmacy and kind of keep that hid as much as possible has made the availability easier. But as far as a decrease, I don't think it's decreased at all. And as far as an increase, I'm not sure at all either.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
1 in 4 patients struggle with opioid addiction. In Howell County, 167.5 prescriptions are given for every 100 people.
Brent Campbell, South Central Drug Task Force. When did you start seeing opioid use?
I saw it actually prior to my law enforcement career. When I've been in law enforcement a little over 20 years now, and I actually saw it shortly after high school. Lost some friends to overdose. Through my law enforcement career, I've seen it throughout the entirety of it. We see an ebb and flow and up and down as far as it goes in different years. We see it more frequently than others. About 2009 through 2012, a huge Oxycontin was a big one. Hydrocodone was always a big diverted pharmaceutical. We still see that. Vicodin, Dilaudids. So throughout my career, we've always dealt with it one way or another. And through my unit I'm assigned to now, through the overt and covert investigations, we've always, pharmaceuticals and diverted pharmaceuticals were always a big undercover status or undercover purchase, money. So there's a lot of money spent on pharmaceutical diversion.
How has the opioid crisis in America affected your job?
From what we do, and as far as just in law enforcement, I say, we see what it brings to the family, the abuse cycles of it, and of course the case weight that we come up against with investigating the diversion part of it, seeing the devastation to families that it brings. We see that on a very personal basis. With the trend of what we're kind of currently seeing with pharmaceuticals and diversion and kind of leaning toward heroin, and what you hear about fentanyl so much on the news media. Currently, what's scary is the fentanyl labs that, China's shipping chemicals over here, and they're actually starting to see fentanyl labs. So I have some upcoming training next month, and that's kind of scary. Because from a law enforcement aspect, I've worked thousands of meth labs in my career, which comes with numerous hazards. It's scary thinking walking into a fentanyl lab with the dangers associated with fentanyl. So that's kind of worrisome. But to know that's coming, it's scary. To see the evolution into the heroin trend in our community is scary because we do see that in a few counties away. We've seen an influx here locally, and to see what the devastation that brings, so it's kind of just spooky as far as we see it going.
Have you seen an increase or a decrease in the last 3 years over opioids?
It's always been steady. There's years, like I spoke about, through around 2009 to 12 with the Oxycontin and the money involved with that. Again, what we see and what the trends we're seeing now, pharmaceuticals, it's always been about money. When you can, split a milligram and Oxycontin tab, bring anywhere from $40 to $80 a tablet, there's always been money in it. Now you flip that on someone that's diverting them and selling them to someone that's abusing them just to try to be normal, the cost of it gets astronomical. So now that's why we're starting to see an evolution into the heroin, because instead of an $80 to a $300 a day habit, they can have a $20 to $60 a day habit. So that's why we're starting to see the influx of heroin, but it generally starts with pharmaceutical abuse. So that's kind of scary as that aspect goes. So I would say it's steady, but evolving, I guess you would put it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Opioid and prescription pills are the driving force in those deaths. Howell County is first in the state and 30th in the nation for opioid addiction.
Steve Purvett, Circuit Judge. When did you start seeing opioid use?
Oh, it's been several years back that we began to see opioid use. When I was in private practice, you would see it in clients, particularly in divorce cases where drug testing was done. They'd come back positive for opioids.
How has the opioid crisis in America affected your job?
Well, like all vices, it affects the outcome of some litigation. If you have a party or a person who's involved in opioid use, it will affect their behavior. It will affect the outcome of a given case. Now that I'm a circuit judge, I see people who come before me on criminal cases who are charged with possession of opioids or possession of methamphetamine. So certainly they've committed a criminal offense by possessing those drugs, and they're facing criminal penalties.
Have you seen an increase or a decrease in the last 3 years over opioids?
Opioids are creeping in to somewhat replace methamphetamine, which has long been the more serious drug of choice in the area, to my observation. And now we're beginning to see more and more of the opioids slowly replacing those or supplementing those, but just seeing more of them.
Thank you.
Anyone taking opioids can become addicted. Continued use leads to addiction, substance disorder, and death.
Next with us is Scott Tucker, a Willow Springs EMT. When did you start seeing opioid use?
Well, I've been in the business since 1984, and I came from New Mexico to here. We really started seeing an increase in the early 90s, probably mid-90s, right when I really started seeing it. I didn't start noticing here in Missouri until probably the last 3 or 4 years.
How has the opioid crisis in America affected your job?
Affected my job. Well, drugs always affects my job, but the worst part is the frequency of number of people that use the drug is what we see the most of. So it's more of a frequency thing. So used to it was one, we'd see one out of 100. Now it's everybody takes those, and then for the overdose or the people that abuse them, it's probably a 30 or 40% increase over the last 2 or 3 years.
Have you seen an increase or decrease? I don't know the answer to that one.
Increase. Did I say that all at the same time? It has, but it is an increase. So, used to years ago we had trouble. Marijuana and heroin was our biggest issues, but that's all kind of went away, and they went to the prescription drugs. I guess they're more readily available. I'm assuming. I don't know. The other one's more of a wherever they're going to make the heroin, whatever country they make it in, or wherever they make it, and then have to bring it here. Where this is right there in Grandma's cabinet. They can get it out of there, or somebody's cabinet to get that out of to to use with the frequency of the bottles and the supply. Ease of supply is probably the problem.
Thank you.
Don't start, and you will not have to stop.
Now, we have with us today Jennifer Green, who is going to share her story. Tell me your story.
Well, I guess when I was doomed from the beginning, but in middle school, I started drinking and partying and smoking weed and all that. So I knew what it felt like to have a head change. And then I had my first kid, Carly, and then we moved to Kabul, and I had shoulder surgery, and after that I was kind of relying on my hydros, just not even for pain anymore, just because it was fun and I liked that feeling. And then it just turned into that we were spending like so much money on it every week, and I was so sick without it. Like I just had to have it. It was the worst withdrawals ever. And then I found out I was pregnant again, so I kind of had to stop, but they told me not to because it would hurt the baby. So I kind of just kept doing it, and eventually I got to where I could quit. And then it's like right after that, as soon as I had my other baby, I don't know, so I guess I switched over to a serious methamphetamine addiction, and it just, I don't know, it's just so hard once you've, I guess, been an addict to just not do it. It's ruined my life for sure. I lost my kids. They haven't been home for 2 years now, which is horrible because you'd think once they get taken, that would straighten you up, but it just tore me apart more. It was like I just pretty much, as bad as it is to say, like I traded my kids for my dope addiction, and that's something I'm not proud of at all. But and then I finally did 74 days in rehab, and I'm like 126 days clean now. So
awesome. Congratulations.
So I'm slowly getting my life back together. It's a long, hard road. Once it sucks you in, you're there. So you can't just want to not do it for someone else. You have to want it by yourself, and you have to get that in your head, or else you're just not going to be able to do it. So I guess that's pretty much it, really.
Thank you for the vital information to help us understand the opioid crisis. There is always hope in life, and taking the smallest step in the right direction can turn out to be the biggest step of your life. Thank you.